Greetings. I just wanted to make a really quick video covering an interesting statement that's found in a Hebrew work from the 12th century. I've thought about posting about it in the past and never got around to it, but today I was discussing it with somebody and, it inspired me to make something quick, so that way I can sort of refer back to it if it comes up in discussions again. So I'm going to be quoting from a work that's known as the Sefer Ha-Qabalah, even though it's called the Sefer Ha-Qabalah. And the author is a gentleman known as Avraham Halevi ben David, or Ibn Dawud is how sources mention him. He lived in Spain in the 12th century, basically the 1100s, and he's one of many men that are known as the Harabad. I often hear people today pronounce this Ravid, the Ravid, but whatever the case, there's three different men who are known as Rabad or Ravid, and he was the first, apparently, right? Abraham ibn Dawud. And in this work, Sefer Ha-Qabalah or Seder Ha-Qabalah, I'm going to look at something that's, at least in this edition, found on the 49th page. He makes a reference to different Kehilot Yisrael, different congregations of Israel, different Jewish congregations, and within the context he means like rabbinic congregations. You could say synagogues if you want, and he's sort of bragging about how they're all over the world, and he talks about how you can even find them Kitsa Africa. I would say this is meaning to the at the end of Africa. Maybe someone might want to say no, it just means the border of Africa, but really it's a moot point because he goes on to say Gal Eretz Africa, all of the land of Africa, Mitzrayim. By the way, I'm sorry, Mitzrayim is Egypt. Where Eretz Hatzvi, I'm not sure what that means. I googled it, and apparently I'm under the impression now that it's a euphemism for the land of Palestine, for the land of Israel. Where Eretz Arab, Arab lands. He mentions Shinar, Elam, Eretz Paras, which means like Persian lands. And he mentions all these other places. This one right here, even though it ends with a wa, I think that's supposed to be a nun sofit. So I think this is supposed to be Tabaristan. But whatever the case, he's mentioning all these different places where you can find practitioners of these Jewish congregations, these congregations of Israel, and he even mentions Kuzariyim Nitgairu, the Khazars that converted, right? And he goes on to say, where Yosef Malkam, their king. Joseph Shalach Sefer, he sent a book, Lerav Hasdai Hanasi ben Rav Yitzhak ben Shaprut. He sent a book to Rabbi Hasdai, the Nasi, who was the son of Yitzhak ben Shaprut. Wechodienu, they made known Shehu al Dat Rabbanut, that he's on the rabbinic understanding, right? The understanding of rabbinism. Basically, he holds to the rabbinic view, and so too with Galamo, and so too all his people. Now, maybe that's an exaggeration. At this point, Avraham ibn Dawud is recounting probably something he heard from others, what he maybe read in a source like a book discussing the conversion of the Khazars. But then he transitions into a first-hand account. He says, "Werainu betoltila," and we saw in Totila, in Toledo, in Spain, benehem, from the sons of their sons, basically the offspring of the Khazar converts, right? Talmidei Chachamim, the students of wise rabbis. They made known to us, Sharitam, that they're standing al dat rabbanut, that they're holding to the rabbinic understanding, right? Or they're remaining standing on the rabbinic understanding. But whatever the case, I thought that was interesting that here it is. We have an 11th century account, 12th century account. It's from the 1100s of specifically the descendants of Khazar converts in Spain, in Toledo. And I thought that was interesting. It's also interesting to think of Khazars making it that far. Something to keep in mind is that Jewish communities, members of Jewish communities, can migrate quite far. From various discussions, many know that there are Portuguese Jews that made it to Africa, and African Jews that made it to India, and Portuguese Jews that made it to India, and Jews who were both Portuguese and African who made it to India, and of course et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there's Ashkenazim who made it to Africa, and here we have, and of course, there's Sephardim that made it to the Americas, that made it to Northern Europe, and everything. And so there were also the descendants of Khazars that made it all the way to Spain, and I would assume that they extended even beyond that, right? And so I just wanted to share that. I thought that was interesting, and I hope others find this interesting. And at least I have it to reference back. You know, say I know of a source that mentions the descendants of Khazar converts in Spain in 12th century Spain, and that's it. All right. On that note, I'll close here. Hope you found this interesting. God bless.